In the first video for this last part of the course, what I want to talk a little bit about is immigration. And clearly, this is going to be presented from immigration into the United States. The story of immigration into other nations is complex and obviously beyond the scope of what we can talk about. So, immigration is, of course, this idea of citizens from another country moving to, and we're going to, moving to the United States in this case. We can see here is immigration in the United States between 1820 and 2022. You can see there was a spike there in the mid 80s, early 90s, but you can see it's been generally on an upward trend. However, there was a big drop just prior to World War II, and that was due to some immigration policies put in place by some bad psychologists. All right, some bad psychologists who basically came to some determinations that the immigrants that were moving to America were harming the national intelligence and were making us a weaker nation. And clearly, we needed that immigration, and it has been on the rise since then. Annual number of new citizens has also been on quite an upward trend. You can see how many we have on a regular basis. Here is the number of new immigrants and what portion of the population that they fill. You can see that, of course, that the blue line, the number of immigrants has really gone up. But what we see is that the proportion of the entire population has, well, it's at a high point, but it's not higher than it traditionally was. Here's refugee resettlements, and you can see right here that there was recently there's been a spike refugee applications, but there hasn't been a lot of spike in resettlements themselves. And the U.S. policy on refugees is growing. At this current state, it is kind of ugly. I'm hoping that it changes soon. So, where do immigrants come from? You can see that the biggest slice of the pie is other. All right, so it's a pretty broad thing. But you can see if you get into the specific slices on the more right side, Mexico is clearly the dominant country for immigrants moving to the United States. Okay? But what's interesting is that why people come and immigrate. And so here we have a little snapshot of the United States versus Canada. And you can see the main reason that the United States immigrants move is family based, whereas in Canada, the number one is employment based. And yeah, there are very specific laws involved in the United States that very much limit how employment based immigration can work. They come to many places, of course they do. Here's a map showing essentially where immigrants come from, and you can see the number one is clearly California on this map, but the next dark spots on there is Texas, Florida, and New York. So you can see here quite clearly, especially when we start looking at in individual counties. The biggest county with immigrants is LA, Miami, and then comes Harris County, and I think that's Houston. Queens, Cooks, Kings, Alameda, King County, Washington. That's Seattle, I think. So you can see where they're basically the biggest chunks are going, or biggest large groups are going to. But yet you find that in the United States, if we take a snapshot of the United States and where immigrants are coming from, it's pretty clear that different parts of America have radically different immigrant populations. Whereas California, the largest slice of the pie is Mexico without a question. But what you find is once you leave move away from California, which is, of course, shares a border with Mexico, so it shouldn't shock us. But you move to New York, and the slice of the pie for others is like over two-thirds of the pie is others. So it's quite an experience. And having been in the immigration, the INS office in Manhattan, I can definitely attest to this slice of the pie called others, because that room was the most multicultural room I have ever experienced in my life.